Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Fitness. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to our ongoing Superpower series, Success Sadhana, where we'll discuss the seventh superpower today, application, the key to unlocking all your superpowers. With your host, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We're close to 17 members on Zoom and close to 10 members on Facebook. I have Shrika helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome to the seventh Superpowers on Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, JM. Glad to see you again and good to be back with everybody. Thanks for joining in. And truly, application is the method, the mechanism through which we unlock all the other superpowers. There's a process that I learned in India for making sandalwood paste. The branches from the sandalwood tree are extremely fragrant. And if you get a little piece, you have to buy it in the marketplace, and a stone and just a little bit of rose water. Pure rose water also smells very nice. And you put a little bit of water on the stone, and then you can grind the wood on the stone, and it makes a paste of sandalwood. So in the hot season in India, people apply it to their forehead, and it keeps a cool head all day. We need cool heads nowadays in the world. And so when you grind sandalwood, the fragrance comes out. And similarly, by the application of the various processes that we've gone through in the last 6 weeks, can you believe it? It's been 6 weeks. We can also unlock the various superpowers that we have within us. And JM, do you have anything else you want to say before I keep my forward motion? Because you know I'll use up the clock, right?
We are good, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So just as a review, we started off with gratitude, and how gratitude leads to happiness. And in the application, we talked about all of these as applicable. They're practices. We have the ability to practice these things. We don't have to wait until they descend, but we have free will, and we can move in a direction. That's what application means. We have free will, and we can enact it. Application is free will enacted with discrimination. We discriminate, we decide what we want, and then we use our free will to enact it. And then it comes out just like the fragrance from the sandalwood. So when we talked about the practice of gratitude, you can appreciate, if you can learn to appreciate what you already have in the moment, then you'll feel fortunate. And I was tracing out some of these words like happiness. It comes from the word hap, which means fortune, and fortune means owned wealth. And oftentimes I have wealth, but I take it for granted. I don't realize I have it. So in the practice of gratitude, we actually look and see closely, what do I actually have? What have I been endowed with by nature? So, yeah, and there's an old saying, everyone claims everyone attributes it to someone else. Some people say it's unknown, but I cried because I had not shoes. Then I met a man who had no feet. And if we can actually understand the value of what we already have, this sense of fortune, which is really the root of the word happiness, arises within us. In the practice of focus, we talked about focus. There's a technical way this is described in the Yoga Sutras. When we focus the mind on anything, our chitta or our mind stuff expands. That's why people like to stare at a particular thing like a football game. They're just watching the ball getting kicked around, but they're focused on one thing, and they feel a little happiness for a while. Of course, the mind contracts again later on, but the mechanical process of focusing the mind, according to the Yoga Sutra, expands the mind, and that creates sukha, or a favorable space. And we've given the example of a fish, a rambunctious fish that's splashing around in a small bowl. But if you put it in a placid, larger lake, you won't notice the ripples. It can swim freely. And when the mind expands, we have a peaceful space. So peace expands from focus. And in the practice of simplicity, we realize that what we are is more important than what we have. And this leads to a kind of purity, because purity means you're free to be yourself. You don't have to add anything extra. You don't have to embellish. You can just be real, as we like to say these days. And that comes from the practice of simplicity. Again, coming to satisfaction. A satisfaction we found is very much related to the practice of gratitude. But we took the saying we found in the botanical gardens in Mendocino County, in a beautiful little forest. There's a brook running through it, and on it there's a bridge, and the management has put a placard in brass on the bridge that says, "No coins necessary to operate creek." It was a kind of a witty way of telling people, don't throw coins in here. It doesn't need any. And the sense of satisfaction that everything is going on around me by a higher power. I don't need to throw in coins to operate creek. This is satisfaction, and it leads to a sense of bliss of my relationship with the higher power that's organizing everything in my life. And then we came to the yoga of the tongue, which is really practical, because the tongue is like the rudder. Whatever way our tongue goes, that's the way our life goes. What we eat and what we say, those two things, it's the entryway sense that leads to all the other senses. And when we're able to not say everything that's on our mind, and realize that our words are seeds and they're creating the world around us, then we come to this knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit. That's the definition of knowledge, because the mind becomes peaceful enough to realize the difference between myself and my body. Then we come to forgiveness, and the practice of forgiveness opens the mind to compassion, because when we're entertaining the idea of forgiving someone, we get a glimpse of other people's condition in the world. They're suffering, perhaps, and we're able to empathize. Pathy means to feel, empathy for a feeling from within, and so forth. These are all metaphysical practices, actually. And then we come to application, which is the key to unlocking all of these superpowers. And the anthem of application is, whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Because boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. Goethe said that. So we're going to look at a few points about application today that you can take away, and you can apply the other practices that open your heart to all the superpowers that are naturally there, but which we suppress because of lack of knowledge and practice. So let's start with just a moment of introspection. We can just sit up a little straighter than we were a second ago. Close your eyes and bring your attention into your breathing system. And notice your breath. And relax, but keep an alert mind. Be alert and aware that you're breathing. Just notice it. And notice that you have the free will to bring your attention to your breath. And then bring the element of gratitude that you're able to breathe. and appreciate that you're basically in an oxygen tent. You're being supplied free oxygen. There's an arrangement for it, and all you have to do is breathe. In fact, you don't even have to try, it just happens. But it's keeping your present body alive and vital. And now use your free will to point your attention to the heart region, the seat of consciousness. We talk about mindfulness, but in Bhakti Yoga, we have heartfulness. The heart actually notices things before the mind does. We feel, and the heart drives us in a particular direction. It's the driver of the chariot of our body. And the way to bring the energies within the heart into synchronicity, we employ the mantra. So the first mantra in the Vedas is a one-syllable mantra, Om. We can say it together 3 times behind muted mics. Om. And now we'll say the mantra that opens the heart to compassion, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And just notice the resonance of the mantra in your heart region. And then bring your awareness back to your breath. And then rub your hands together to bring some energy back to your external body. Open your eyes and come back into the room. Welcome back. And now let's take a look at a few slides. And just after I talk about the principles of application, then we'll take some reflections and questions. This is William H. Murray, made a successful expedition to Mount Everest before it became a lot more technically possible to do. Back in those days, they didn't have the kind of tools. Now it's getting crowded up there, I understand. But this was when it was an impossible task. William H. Murray, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. And that contains the words of Goethe at the end, German philosopher. And this idea is profound in that this enactment of one's determination, carrying it out, actually, moving forward with it, despite the fact that we're moving into an unknown area, it brings with it the facility to carry out the activity. There are unforeseen energies that come, but it doesn't happen until we commit, until we take the first step on the longest journey, that we become aware of those energies. Otherwise, we're like the person who tries to taste honey from the outside of the jar. You can lick the jar, you're not getting the taste. So there's the man, Goethe. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. So here are some foundational philosophical points about application. And I brought it into the meditation at the beginning, and that is that we all have a modicum of free will. You can experience that by noticing that you can shift your attention at will to wherever you want it to go. That's consequential, literally. Consequence means it opens up a series of events, because where attention goes, energy flows. And we have the free will to point our attention anywhere we like. You can practice doing that and then realize that you don't have to follow the whims of your senses. You can make a more determined discrimination about what's good and bad, which ways to invest one's awareness and attention. The second is you're an agent for change, creation, and improvement. Never claim to be permanently unqualified. You can change, you can create, you can improve, because you are an agent of change. And because we have volition. Volition is something that's not inherent in stones, only in the living force, and that's what we are. We are a living force. We're not dead stones. The third is application is the deliberate enactment of your free will. So we have free will, and we can enact it by deciding what we're going to do and then carrying out our plan. It means we have to move. So there's some foundational points, and here are the applications, very practical. Recognize your free will, because oftentimes, well, let me just say, I could adopt an attitude that I can't do anything, fatalistic, and it may not be something that I write down and say, I can't do anything, but it comes out of my speech and my attitude that it's not possible for me to change. I am the way I am. I can't have anything more than I have. It just, whatever happens, happens. However, we can recognize that we have free will. We discussed that a second ago, and that we can point our attention wherever we decide, if we become aware of it, and where attention goes, energy flows. And besides that, there are higher powers that come into play when we do decide and then move forward with a plan. The next is the vow, a very interesting word that we're going to go into in a second, but application requires a vow. You have to actually decide what you want and say, I'm going to do it. That's when life starts getting exciting and productive. The next is gather knowledge. We're little knowledge gathering entities. Just notice if you're on a bus or a plane or standing anywhere, everyone has their nose buried in either a book or a device, or they're trying to read something. Why do we learn to read anyway? Why do we teach everybody in society to read? Well, in a democracy, ostensibly it's so everyone knows what they're doing when they vote, so we don't mess up. I don't know if it's working, but The idea is that you should be able to have free access to knowledge. And this is our nature, because we have a knowledge potency within us. Part of the living force is to gather knowledge. So you have to gather specific knowledge. And number 4, practice. We'll talk about how to do that. So the vow, if you trace the word back, vow means to speak or write a pledge. Yeah, you stated it. You said, I'm going to do this. And most importantly, and you'll hear me say this again and again, write it down. Why is there a United States of America? Well, someone looked at the Magna Carta, which somebody else wrote down, and then said, hey, let's make a document just like this, only with a few more points. And so some people got together, and probably at a Starbucks or something, and they hammered out the Constitution of the United States, and they wrote it down. Instead, a document is sitting there in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. You can go see it. And it is the nucleus for all other laws and all the other ways in which people move about the United States. Is why? Because somebody wrote it down. We made a pledge. We're going to do this. We're doing it. And we don't care if somebody kills us, because we're going to try to do it, breaking away from the crown in England. And there was a Revolutionary War, but they made a vow. So Obama used to say, don't boo, vote. The word vote is from the same root of vow. It's a formal expression of one's wish or choice. When I studied economics, first textbook I look at, it said, money is dollar votes. You vote. Okay, where'd you spend your money? On a boat. It's like, that's what you voted for, that you want to sit out there on the water. So when we make a vow, it becomes practical when we enact it. And so realize that, I mean, you can boo or you can vote, and vote has something very special. And a way to remember that is in the next slide, which is the word vow has a big V at the beginning of the word. So the V in vow, think of it as a wedge. You see how that wedge breaking that log apart is a V? So vows have a V at the beginning, and your pledge is your wedge. Your pledge is a wedge. That's original. I looked all over the internet. No one else thought of it. Your pledge is your wedge. And so when you make a pledge, when you make a vow, boy, that's when life gets exciting. You're a human. Do it. Make a vow. Write it down. Don't be afraid. Don't just go along with the flow. Get out a document. Write your own constitution. And if it's not a constitution, write some tiny little thing. And then notice how your life is different because you said it. And if you write it down, then it's grossified. It's gone from the subtle element, and now it's in grosser matter. It's starting to manifest already from the pen and ink on the paper, and it's taking shape. So you have to make the vow. That's the important part of application. No vow, what are you going to apply? Your pledge is your wedge. Okay. The next one to remember about wedges is that they have a very thin side and they have a thick side. Why is that important? Because, of course, it's a simple device, but we use it everywhere. There are hundreds of places where you could, examples you could write down about a wedge: doorstop, wood splitter, a lift, it lifts things up off the ground, a knife. We use knives all the time. It's a wedge. It's got a very thin end, a very thin side, and a thicker side. And when you apply a little bit of pressure, then what happens is then you open up more space. And in our case, in the case of application, using the wedge and the vow, then you're opening a small space with a little bit of pressure, then you're going to get more and more opportunity. So how to make a wedge? Make a tiny but concentrated vow. So let's come back into the room for a minute. And when we're talking about pledges and wedges, your pledge is your wedge, remember that the wedge has a very, very thin side. And this is the fulcrum of power in application. Start with the thin end. It doesn't matter how thin it is. In fact, the thinner the better. With a knife, we sharpen them all the time because we want them to be thinner to start with, to open up the space. So in the same way, when we apply these principles that we've been talking about, they're all lofty principles, no doubt, that we've been discussing about focus and gratitude, simplicity, satisfaction, yoga of the tongue, forgiveness. All of these, they're metaphysical properties. They're subtle. And how do we get started with them in the turbulent world we live in, where we're bombarded from all sides by all kinds of different ideas and sound vibrations and so forth? Start with the thin end. Make a vow, but make it something that's so small and so thin that it has an entry point into your life somewhere. And that's what starts it. And then it requires a little bit of pressure. Means you have to keep putting some effort into that. And gradually it will open up for you a new area of life in satisfaction, yoga of the tongue, forgiveness, and so forth, that will bring out your superpowers. Now that I've sort of given a basis, and I'll go into a few more details in a minute, let's just take some reflections. What did you hear so far? What principle or practical point did you hear that you feel like you could take away and utilize at some time? Write it down on a popsicle stick, pull it out of your pocket when you're waiting in line and say, I'm going to apply this right now. You could write in the chat box. Let's light up the chat box, please. And then also, if you have any comments you want to make live, feel free to turn on your camera. And we're all in casual environments, doesn't matter where you are. And it changes everything, even one extra video camera on. And come on and say whatever you think and feel. Reflections just means anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind, one concept or idea. Yes.
I heard your pledge is your wedge. And that idea of making a decision that you're going to do something, then providence moves too, and everything starts to happen so that you can stick to your decision. And the way to do all these other 6 superpowers is through the superpower of deciding and applying through a vow.
Thank you very much for the summary. Your pledge is your wedge. Yes. Shubha, I can tell you're going to say something. Well, anyway, you look enthusiastic, so I appreciate it. Let's see what else.
Just posted on the Zoom chat. Definitely writing down where attention goes, energy flows as a reminder to myself. So she likes that.
Oh yeah, you could tattoo that one. If you want to get a tattoo, put that one on your arm. You know, because where attention goes, energy flows. It's so philosophical and practical at the same time. We could speak volumes about it, and we have. And it really works. You'll just notice it in your life. And it's a point to keep coming back to. Thanks, Jesse.
Pavni says, I love the point of the providence coming to help, but I have to take the first step.
Yeah, it's all locked up until you actually decide. And it's amazing because if you make the decision that I'm going to do this, then even if all the odds are against you, there's going to be progress, because the force of our free will, when we actually begin to enact it in the world, is undeniable. Just look at plants. If you ever notice how plants go through, around, over, under, I mean, the jasmine species, they are relentless. I saw in my neighborhood, there's a sign that says rough road ahead or something like that. I don't know what it says. I can't see it anymore because some vines have grown up inside the tube and come out and wrap themselves around. I mean, the living force is powerful. And if we decide which way we're going, then we will prevail or we'll make progress. It may not be in the exact way we thought in the beginning, but that is true, that the power to move forward will be supplied to us.
A few more coming in. Lakshmi says, using the thin edge of the wedge is a powerful image or the idea, or starting small.
Yeah. Do you find that it helps having it's smaller? It's almost like homeopathy. Homeopathy, they use a diluted substance. Sometimes it's even like a poison or something, but it's so diluted, it's just like one molecule. And then there's a beginning point. It's so subtle. So when we make our pledge in the thinnest way possible, it has an entry place. Yes.
There's one question from Iopa. So going with the flow is bad?
It depends which way the flow is going. There's a discussion of this in the wisdom literatures. When we come into this body that we're in now, we have natural propensities. So in a human society, generally, there's some kind of training that we get from the beginning. Do this, don't do that. You know, your parents will tell you, don't hit your brother, don't smash that, be nice, and things like that. Where is that coming from? I mean, if you just, or an animal for that matter. I met somebody who had a dog and he didn't train him, and the dog just jumps up on you. You come and jumps on everybody because they never told don't jump on everybody. So the flow within us isn't always necessarily going in a productive direction. So it sounds counterintuitive to spiritual practice that there would be some discipline, but if we find out how to catch a higher flow, and that's what we're interested in, and we use that discipline to catch the higher flow, then going with the flow is what we do. Yes, for sure. But we have to choose the right flow. Otherwise, we can be dragged out to sea and drowned by the flow.
Saurabh says, I appreciate your articulation of importance of writing down what you want to do and in a place which is visible to you at most times to be able to begin the practice.
Yeah, that's true. I do advocate that a lot. I've found it throughout my life to be invaluable. And there have been studies about this as well, about taking a pen to paper and how powerful it is. And you can experience it in the moment. It changes your life, actually. It can change your day, it can change your life just by writing down what you want to do. It's such a simple exercise, it can be overlooked.
Next is Subhadra, who says, we have free access to knowledge. We are knowledge gathering entities.
That's right. Our nature is that we have, in Sanskrit, it's spelled C-I-T. The C in Sanskrit is pronounced C-H, so it's called chit. So we have a chit potency within us, and that is a knowledge gathering potency. It's what we like to do. And in the human life, in the human apparatus that we have, we're spiritual entities who are animating that apparatus, that we have the tendency to gather knowledge.
We have Mala, who says, a small wedge to lift up as a lever is a powerful analogy. Oftentimes, pledging, getting in actions takes focus and energy.
Yeah, it lifts us up. When we have a vow and we use the wedge principle, we can be lifted. Start with the small end.
Yeah, same. Pavani mentions the same thing. Wedge thin end, start small and make gradual increments. Blanca says, commitment means refraining from doing some things we like. It's interesting. It's the first condition to grow. Maybe it's a fair price for focus.
Commitment means refraining from doing some things we like. Yeah, that's true. Nice point, Blanca. It's interesting. It's the first condition to grow. Yeah, that is interesting. And as I mentioned in that context, sometimes it's counterintuitive too. Like, and then maybe it's a fair price for focus. Definitely. Definitely. You know, the word discipline comes from a Latin word which means learner. When we decide what we want and we direct our energy in a particular way, we're going to be fighting against other forces, other flows that are coming into our life, but for the sake of entering a higher flow and going with that flow, we get to choose our flow. Okay, Jam, let's see a few more slides.
Sure. I'll just take a moment and make an announcement as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so quite a few people have been asking for more deeper discussions around these practices. So very happy to, sorry, just on that. Very happy to announce that we are starting a new program called Bhakti Circle, which basically is a journey to discover yourself. It's a weekly meetup to develop spiritual friendship and harmonize your body, mind, and spirit, where we will touch upon the various spiritual concepts and how to attain them, like happiness, dharma, karma, consciousness, moods and modes, yoga, etc. So it will start on Thursday, June 10th, which is coming up next, and at 5:30 p.m. Quite a few people have already registered. In case you are interested in registering as well, please do email hi@vaisheshikadas.com and we will sign you up. Again, Bhakti Circle to discover yourself, beginning Thursday, June 10th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. If I'll share the registration details in the chat box soon. So with that, I'll go back to the presentation.
The operators are standing by to take our calls.
Yes.
Please sign me up. I'd like to attend that. I'd like this handshake, you know, some kind of a vow. It's a deal. We're saying, yes, I'm starting. Okay, good. Welcome. Welcome into the flow. How to make a wedge. Make it tiny and emphasize tiny, but concentrated vow. Those are two important words in the wedge principles. Make it tiny, but make sure it's concentrated. There's an influencer named James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits. It was a bestseller. He emphasizes in his blog, he says, fewer words with more meaning. So try to make it concentrated. Boil it down to exactly what is your vow, but start with something that's so tiny. Okay, in the next point, I found that if you have a house on fire desire, what is a house on fire desire? In fact, I remember my father used to say, you know, when you were really getting going on something, so he's going like a house on fire. And then I came across a teaching from my teacher, my spiritual teacher, who talked about how if you go to a place, let's say you live in a place where you don't speak.
Sorry, I think we lost you for a few seconds. So yeah, let me go back to the screen share.
If you go to a neighborhood where you don't speak the language and your house catches on fire, my teacher said, somehow or other, you'll get the point across. You'll be able to communicate that you need help because your need is so strong. Your necessity is so great. And to move forward with a vow, to enact something, develop a house on fire desire. Because once that's there, it doesn't matter what the obstacle is. You can say, oh, I don't speak the language. If your need is strong enough, you'll communicate it. You'll get it across to the people by gesticulating or indicating in one way or another. So this is an important point, is to catch fire with your desire to move forward in a particular way. That's the first practice. Second is write it down. Write it down, write it down, write it down. Practice writing down what you want. Because once you write it down, you might think, well, that's not actually what I want. That sounds clunky. That sounds unnecessary and so forth. Well, then decide, what do you really want? So, quote I like from Henry David Thoreau: if you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put foundations under them. And the foundation really is when you start to manifest it through writing it down, what I actually want. So we have house on fire desire, then writing it down. And the next is to get quality information. And I love this a point. If you follow the etymology of inform, the word information comes from inform, which literally means to give shape to something. It literally means to give shape to something. So once we have something that we're looking for, that we want to enact, a vow, we've written it down, then find out where's the information about it. So the costs of storing, mining, and using poor information are staggering. So this from the Data Quality Field Guide by Tom Redman. If you get poor information, the cost is staggering. So search out good information. That's the next ingredient. It's like, this is like baking bread. You just follow, the bread's too hard. Let's say something else, making some pudding or something. You just follow these few steps and you'll be in the flow of application. Okay, gather information, get mentors. Mentors are like sea captains. You don't want to cross the sea without somebody who's been across as many times as possible. When you find somebody who's done it many, many times. In fact, if some people oftentimes they go in for a surgery and it's like, okay, how many times have you done it? None, you're the first one. First, is this your first flight? Yeah, this is my first solo flight I've ever done. A little nervous. If you find someone that's done it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, then you start feeling a little better about the company you're keeping. But mentors are so powerful. Every successful person has mentors. No man is an island. So our chief one in life is somebody who will make us do what we can. Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's like downloading almost. When you meet somebody who's venerable, who's actually applied the thing that you're trying to apply, and you get around them and you're sincere, you have a house on fire desire, you have your vow already made, then you're open to it. And it's almost like just plugging in a wire and you can feel the information being downloaded into your heart. And finally, practice. You start by doing and remembering that you'll always be bad at something before you get good at it. This is so important because failure is the pillar of success. Like in learning a language, if you're not willing to fail at it, then you're not going to learn it very quickly. It'll take you 100 years to learn language. And Ethan Hawke, the actor, and gave a really nice point about this in an interview that he did when he talked about how, like kids, when they play, they build sandcastles. They're not thinking, I have to build the best sandcastle that was ever made, otherwise forget it. And everyone's going to criticize me if I don't. They just get out there and it's like, yay, build a sandcastle, go for it. They're not thinking about the end result. And he also, he talks about how you have to be willing to play the fool in order to go forward in a creative process and to enact your goals. Don't be so guarded. I mean, try to move forward and realize that as you're doing it, you're going to make mistakes. And that's actually the pillar that arises when you make the mistake. And that is pillar of success. So those are the elements. They're very simple, but they allow application in any direction you'd like to take. And if you take up the metaphysical processes that we've been discussing, like focus. I mean, where do you start? Start with the thin end. It's like, I can't focus, people say, I can't focus. Remember, don't claim to be permanently unqualified because I can't focus. Okay, then you have to apply the process. Where would you start? On the thin end. How would you focus on the thin end? Just for 3 seconds. Can you do that? Practice focusing for 1 second if you can't. And that's where you start. And with these particular elements, you can move forward and bring out your superpowers. Okay, let's take a few reflections. I see the board is lit up, and I want to come back to that. Don't let me forget that quote. I won't do it now. I'll save it because it's a doozy, that last one. All right, let's hear a few reflections or if there's any questions.
Sure, if you have a few reflection, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type in your chat box. There are a few on Zoom chat already. So Subhadra says, a house on fire desire and starting tiny seems incompatible. I get impatient when starting small. How to reconcile?
Yeah, house on fire desire doesn't necessarily have to look like something externally that is impressive or like a house actually burning down, but it gets manifest in your consistency. In all practice, consistency is king, because when you apply something over and over again, drops a day wear the stone away. And if you're able to keep doing something like a writing mentor that I have told me years ago, he pulled me aside when I was struggling to finish my first book. And he said, I have a secret for you, and that is write 1 sentence a day. Write 1 sentence a day. And so, yeah, if you have a house on fire desire, it can be concentrated, just like a nuclear reaction. It just starts apparently with a very subtle element. Maybe it's just a tiny particle that's being split, and then there's a reaction that comes from that. So keep the house on fire desire and incubate it. I hope that's not incongruous with with physics. You keep it in your heart, and then use it to create the energy so that you consistently show up for the practice.
Linda, who says, I have this Tony Robbins quote on my desk. If you talk about it, it's a dream. If you envision it, it's possible. But if you schedule it, it's real. She also says that regarding mentors, I was struggling to keep up with my walking practice. Now I walk with another neighbor who I saw walking every night, and her encouragement and accountability has made such a difference.
Nice. You're also supportive. You bring in all this evidence here. It's fantastic. Yeah, the Tony Robbins thing is brilliant. He's really brilliant when it comes to bringing out these points and enacting them. He's got a kind of genius for it, and an amazing way that he can enact them himself. So that's a really powerful quote. And the mentorship is really important too, because we get pulled along by our association, whichever way they're going.
Nirali makes a point. I tend to overthink, and even during meditation, I understand my folly and distract with thoughts. This is inspiring to bring focus back on meditation and empty thoughts.
Well, you're not the only one. Everyone has trouble with the mind because it has natural qualities of being distracted. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that it is very determined, it's very strong, and it's mad. Mad, not like angry, but like crazy. And so the mind, it takes a lot of practice to bring the mind to make the mind a friend. Yeah, please go ahead.
Mike says, I like the point about practicing and not worrying about failures or mistakes, as perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah, some of the projects we worked on during the pandemic last year, we had some global projects we were working on, and was very interesting phenomenon because we decided ahead of time. We made a few rules. One is assume it can be done. Start with that. Assume it can be done and then work backwards from there. And then we said, never waste a good crisis. This is the best time, not the worst. And nothing shuts down. We're going to go for it. And then there's this fail forward fast. Give yourself permission to try things. And if they fail, that it's something we know now. And there's always an element that comes out of that becomes useful to us. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up again.
Eric says, know what you really want, write it down, get good information, find mentors who have done it, dream castles in the air, then build the foundation.
That'll work. Guaranteed.
Blanca has a question. How do you make sure what you think you want at the moment is real and it is contributing to your final purpose and not the opposite?
Well, one of the ways that we can do that is by deciding where we're going to take our information from to determine what our ultimate purpose is in life, because it's a big question. And so you hear me refer over and over again to wisdom literatures. So there are different places that we can get our guidance. And if you look carefully at where you're getting it and you discern that, yes, here's the best place to get it from, it helps you to triangulate and come to this point of understanding that, yeah, this is what I should be doing. For example, we've given in that class called Questions Are the Answer. I began by talking about the Vedanta Sutra. It's an ancient wisdom literature that starts off with the aphorism Atato Brahma Jignasa, which means now's the time to ask a bigger question. Don't ask about the kind of things that are already being provided to you by nature. Try to go beyond nature and ask about Brahman, or what's beyond this phenomenal world. What is metaphysical? What is beyond the physical? Ask about Brahman, the spirit. And it's a lofty topic, but the wisdom literature starts there and said, ask about that. Let the other things take care of themselves for the most part. You don't have to invest all your life in them. I mean, how many millions do you need? And how many houses can you have? You can buy acreage in Montana, but you're going to leave it behind someday. So the wisdom literatures go on from there and say, here's what's most important. Here's where you should how you should hone your attentions and your attention and your value creating systems in life, and let that be your guide. And then there's mentorship for that also.
I thank you for the answer, but I think if I can express it, probably it comes from this idea that it should be like this. Your desire should be like this big, like you want to save your house because it's on fire, right? Probably it's a bit more philosophical, but what's really worth fighting for that that strong, that as if it were a matter of life and so it's more like that, because when you think of something and maybe you achieve it or not, but then when you grow, or when something changes, conditions change, then you see that it wasn't probably that that big or that or it is not that beautiful as you were thinking. Probably marriage, or probably study something, or you see my point. So it's really that desire, that need, how to get it, or is probably is what you're saying, that you discover it or you create it. Is
like in a corporation. Thanks for articulating that. In a corporation, there's an overarching purpose to the company. And then within the umbrella, under the umbrella of the company, there are a bunch of other little companies within the company that they're their own departments, and they have to work hard and have their own goals and so forth. But if those smaller units within the big corporation lose sight of the ultimate purpose of the corporation, that's called bounded rationality in management. And what happens is they start thinking, oh, this smaller department is the all important thing. There has to be an awareness of why we're doing this. So in a lifetime, in our lifetime, if we can create that bigger umbrella, starting with the Tato Brahma Jignasa, what is the ultimate purpose of my life? For instance, in the most famous wisdom literature called Srimad Bhagavatam, there's an overarching theme, and that is it's a king who's going to die in 7 days. And he says, so what's the purpose of my life? And how am I supposed to die properly? So when I was writing my priorities, and I told you about this at the beginning of the pandemic, what are my ultimate priorities? And I had to put like get ready for death at the top. When you do that, you're putting a big umbrella up, because then everything else takes a relative kind of position after that. And I've had that sort of urge since I was a kid. I'm writing about this now in something I'm writing, but there's this sense of like, why do I have to go to high school? I'm going to die anyway. Everything ends. So,
Okay.
think big. That's what a Tato Brahma Jignasa means. Like, you got to think bigger now, little living entity. Don't just get stuck with what the squirrels are happy with. They get a nut and they go home and they're like, yay, I won. It's like, you didn't win much. It's just a nut. So, whatever we get in this world is not a big deal, but what we're getting ourselves ready for, that's a really big deal.
So it's actually like getting the big things aligned in a way, and then fitting like the smaller things, making sure that they help in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. Yeah. And we have to do the smaller things too, because there are elements in our life that we have to attend to. There's the hierarchy of needs that we have and so forth. So we do have to attend to a few things. But if we get absorbed in those and forget about self-actualization, then we end up with an empty bag at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We have 3 more minutes left. You want to cover the next slide?
Let's look at the slides. Thank you for reminding me, saving me from running it out on the field. Music is a proud, temperamental mistress. Give her the time and attention she deserves, and she is yours. Slight her, and there will come a day when you call and she will not answer. So I began sleeping less to give her the time she needed. So in practice of music, you may skip a lesson here or there, but when it comes time to play, then you're like, oh, where's my superpower? I don't have it. It's not in my fingers. You have to attend every day and give the attention, apply it. Drops a day wear stone away. My teacher gave me this quote, and he wrote over 80 books, and he applied this principle to everything he did. Just keep applying, and the biggest obstacles will wear through finally with application. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. I love that one because it helps you to stay on the small end of the wedge. When your mind starts taking off and thinks, I can't do this, it's too big, go back to the smaller end and just put a little pressure, inch by inch. You can do it, no problem. I find that in writing. In writing, it's like swimming in the middle of an ocean, trying to finish a book. In fact, it's like you just don't think you're writing a book, just keep swimming and try to go 1 inch. And that's where you have to stay all the time, 1 inch at a time. What else can we do? We're not that powerful. We can only do a little bit. However, if we line things up properly and we have the guidance, then we're moving in a direction where we start to manifest powers that come from a higher source, that are coming out of us, that are otherworldly and that are completely satisfying in life. And that's the point. So we've completed. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us for the last 7 weeks to go through the 7 superpowers ending in application, which ties them all together. And it's been a real pleasure going through them with you. So as we say goodbye for today, we can remember the yogis in the Himalayas. They sit in caves and meditate till they come out to find some roots. And when they see each other on the path in the mountains, they raise their hands and they wave and they say, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. So we're all in little caves here. You come out of your cave, turn on your camera, turn on your mic, and just say, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.